Shalom and welcome to His Israel, and this is Karen Hannah in Jerusalem. And tonight we're going to be looking at the very first month of the biblical calendar, which is Nissan. And along with Nissan, we're going to be also thinking about a new Shalom. Oh, I can see. I'm just trying out this new iPad. Because my iPhone that I usually use just wasn't working tonight. So here we go with the iPad. And as I was saying, this Nissan, we're going to be starting a new series in Being Holy, Being Whole, which is called Keep Climbing. Now, there's a rabbi in the old city who once said there are only two kinds of people in the world: those who are moving forward and those who are not. So I'm assuming actually that the fact that you're even watching means that you're one of those who are wanting to move forward, to keep going forward in your path, the path of life that God has for you, that our Father has, and He always has the perfect plan and the perfect path. Because a path, by definition, is something that takes you somewhere. So you need to be on one path or the other, and it all depends which one, in which direction you're moving, whether you're going to fulfill all the purposes and the wonderful things that He has in store for your life. Now, how do you know? To be on a dynamic spiritual path, it's not always easy. It's a challenge, and that's why I think of it as almost climbing this mountain. Well, it could be the mountain of the Lord, a mountain of holiness, and you wanting to climb higher and get as high as you can. It makes me think here in Israel, people say, "Hachayim ze lo picnic." Life is not a picnic, and it's lovely to have picnics when you can, but life itself is just always not a picnic. It's a challenge. And every day sometimes things happen that they may just seem small, but they are challenges and testing how you're going to react and what decision you're going to make in that case. And I came across a very helpful little tool that I use, and it's called the 4-second breath. You take a pause for 4 seconds where you breathe in. It's a deep breath. You breathe in for the count of 4, hold it, and then breathe out for the count of 4. And it's amazing. Just doing that seems to settle you and gives you enough calm just to make hopefully the right decision, or to say the right thing, or just have the right reaction to whatever that situation is. So let's go on. So as I was saying, a real spiritual path is quite steep. It's not just a little stroll through a meadow. I mean, those moments come when you can rest and have a break and enjoy the view that you've reached. But it's steep, and when it's also, you can compare it to a ladder. You think of Jacob's ladder, where you can't leap up a ladder unless you're Superman in one leap or a couple of big leaps. You have to climb to be safe and secure and get to the top where you're heading for. You have to take one rung at a time, move one step at a time. And actually, I heard a rabbi just the other day was giving a lesson, and he said we're going to be seeing how Nissan, of course, is connected with the Exodus. And he said, the slaves had to be prepared. I mean, through that whole process, even of the plagues, of everything, they had to be prepared. But at the same time, when it says the time came, they had to leave in haste. They left Egypt in haste and then wandered through the wilderness. But on a spiritual climb, you can't do it in haste. It's a slow process, and it's more like the wilderness process, that you have to take one step at a time to get where you're wanting to go. And it takes hard work, because as well as challenging, it can often be painful, because being able to recognize and in order to refine certain characteristics, you come to the realization that, oh my goodness, this perspective I had was wrong, or that understanding wasn't quite hitting the mark, and I'm going to have to make adjustments. And now humans aren't like snakes. We don't just shed skin when we have to make a change or we're growing. It's an awareness and a conscious process to be able to shed and let go whatever it was that was holding us back and constricting us. So that's all part of it. Growing spiritually, it can be challenging and painful. But when you accept the challenge to say, all right, I'm going to do this, it also becomes exhilarating, it becomes exciting, because you suddenly realize you are spiraling up, you are gaining higher ground, you're growing in holiness, you're growing in awareness, and the climb actually starts becoming more beautiful, and the views become more breathtaking, and the rewards and blessings are abundant. So for every challenge you face, and we do, there are always challenges. For every challenge, the rewards are abundant, you find. So this new Rosh Chodesh cycle, we will be moving forward in God's purposes for our lives, and we're going to keep climbing. And the process that helps us do this is, in Hebrew, or in Judaism, it's called Musar. And Musar comes from the word for instruction. So we trust it's God, it's the Lord who's instructing us in the way we should go, because we are looking to Him. And Musar is a practice that focuses on understanding human characteristics, all too human characteristics that we all have, and the character traits are called midot. And the singular, like courage, is a midah, but courage and humility are midot, plural. And so we're going to be looking at these. We're going to take one or two characteristics each month and examine them and explore them and see how we can make applications in our own lives to refine and strengthen our own personal individual characteristics. So let's see. And it's all just, I think that the thing we have to always remember is that it has to begin with the Lord. It has to begin with God as our shepherd, and our eyes are always looking to Him, and He is faithful to lead us in the path He wants us to go on. And so as well as courage, this actually takes humility. And I'm just having a look here. It says, there's some beautiful quotes here, and I'm wondering which ones to select, because, here's one from Winston Churchill. He says, success is not final. So even if you think that you've succeeded in overcoming a certain midah, he says success is not final. You have to keep working at it, and failure is not fatal. So even if you make a mistake, even if you fail in something, it's not fatal. But he says it's the courage to continue that counts. And he learnt that very well himself through the terrible war that he led his country through. So to say it again, success is not final. You can't rest on your laurels in any area. Failure is not fatal, but it's the courage to continue that counts. And I think it was Elizabeth Elliot who also said it's a beautiful quote. She said, "Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's just that quiet prayer at the end of the day that says, 'I'll try again tomorrow.'" So there will be successes and there will be failures, but the main thing is to have the courage to continue. Now, it's not a coincidence that I placed the trait or midah of courage with that of humility, that I paired those two together, because they may be perceived as opposites. You know, if you think of courage, you think of fire that has a lot of energy and it rises up and it prompts you to action. So you can compare courage and fire. But humility, on the other hand, compares more with water. Water is quieter and it always seeks the lowest place. But an important thing to remember this in relation to our human characters and behavior is that to find the perfect aspect, there must be the balance, because every characteristic has extremes. So the secret and the aim is to find the balance of that characteristic. So let's look, for example, courage. If it's like fire, fire can be very positive and warms you, but if the fire gets out of control, it does great damage. It's very destructive. So the same with courage. If people push the courage too far to one extreme, it can turn into violence and be very destructive. But on the other hand, if you take courage to the lack of courage, on the other hand, it leads to fear or hopelessness. So to find the right balance, you find true courage. And with humility too, for true humility, there must be a balance. Because if you take humility too far to one side, one extreme, it can lead to self-condemnation and making yourself much less than you are. It drains life. But if you push humility too far the other way, you become proud of how humble you are. It can lead to pride and self-sufficiency, that you say, well, I'm too humble to ask anyone for help. And all of it comes down to the fact that being humble is really being just, the more you can empty yourself of self, the more it's true humility. I'm trying to remember, I think it was G.K. Chesterton who said, it's a lovely quote, he said, speaking of a friend of his who was a very spiritual man, he said, "I know a man who is so serious about God that he can't take himself too seriously." And I mean, that's the thing. If we're taking ourselves too seriously, it means we're focusing too much on ourselves and not taking God seriously enough and having faith in His ability to do what we need and to strengthen us. So let's see, where was I? So I think that's the thing. It's being truly humble is just to be empty of oneself, and allowing, the more we can empty that ego, that self, the more place there is for God to come in and to do what He can do far better than we can do. And it's like comparing a vessel, saying, okay, if you fill a vessel with self, like it's a vessel being filled with water, you can't add anything more in it, because but if we continually say, right, it's not me, Rabbi Sachs actually said, when it becomes too much about me, our humility is out of balance. So if you think, well, this doesn't suit me, or it hurts your pride, or you feel, oh no, they're letting me down, and now it's, and you get into self-pity. Self-pity is one of the worst character traits we could have, because it's so negative. That really drags one down. But you can have other signs of being too full of self is you have too much self-concern. Oh, what will happen to me? What will become of me? Or self-condemnation is bad, like saying, I'm too weak to do this, I can't do this. And then, of course, the other hand was self-sufficiency, saying, I need no help. I mean, I'm just going to do this by myself. I don't need anybody's help, let alone God's. But if you have a humble, open, and trusting soul, you will be filled with the joy of the Lord that is our help and strength. It reminds me of a friend of blessed memory, Gerrit Nel, and Gerrit said one day, he was in South Africa actually, and walking one evening, and the Lord said, go into the cemetery. And he said, oh my goodness, why? What am I going to do in the cemetery? And he said, just walk through it. So he was walking through, and then he felt the Lord was telling him to stop at this one grave site. And he said, okay, Gerrit, now just really shout some horrible things at the person in this grave. And he said, what? What if anyone hears me? But he did it, and he started shouting, you're so stupid, and you never get anywhere. And I don't know what he's saying. I'm trying to think. He was saying these like really negative, horrible things. And then he felt that was enough. And then the Lord said, then he said that he felt the Lord say to him, well, what do you think that person felt? And Gerrit said he didn't feel anything, because he's dead, he didn't feel anything. And he said, well, that's how, if you dead to self, if you truly die to self, die like in that negative aspect, if you die to that negative aspect of self, then even if somebody says something terrible to you, or you get, insulted, or something goes wrong, or something bad happens, that you won't allow it to hurt you, or you won't allow it. You can receive it and deal with it, but you won't let it pull you down. And I think that's the thing. It's trusting to get our true identity as children of God, that we are a royal priesthood and a holy nation if we're in His kingdom, and that we can strive to become more of who He created us to be, which is the best we can be in His image. Right, let's see, what is the next thing? Well, I think I'm going to stop there, because I think that's given us enough of an idea of, where our security must be, where our trust isn't in ourselves, our trust is in our Creator, the one who made us in His image, and who will be there and is with us, and He sees and hears us and cares for us every step of our journey. Right, now I want to go on, because there are two more aspects to cover. I'm trying to watch the time here. All right, we do have a bit more time. Every month, as those who've been with us for a previous series know, that every month is connected with a tribe, and the tribe is an order of their encampment and the wandering through the wilderness. So, of course, the first tribe, which matches with Nissan, the first biblical month, is the tribe of Judah. And Judah is recognized for his courage of heart, for the courage that he had. And he is, of course, the kingly tribe, the from which the line of the tribe of Judah, the King of Kings, emerges. And he was selected for royalty, Judah was, by Jacob, his father, at Jacob's deathbed, and you can read about that, of course, in Genesis 48, verse 8. But the interesting thing was, and that Jacob alluded to, was that eventually all the tribes would be referred to by his name. They would be called Yehudim. And we see evidence of this in last month, the 12th month of Adar, where although Mordecai and Esther were of the tribe of Benjamin, they were referred to as Yehudim, and all the tribes, all the Jewish people that were scattered throughout the whole Persian Empire were called Yehudim. So that prophecy of Jacob's came true. And but there was also another place in the book of Daniel where you see the 3 young Jewish boys who were thrown into the fiery furnace and miraculously came out unscathed. They were also called Yehudim men. They were called Yehudim. And the thing that connects the 3 in the furnace and Mordecai and Esther and Daniel himself was that they refused to bow to idols. They would not. Mordecai refused to bow to Haman and anything or anybody else except for the one true God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And that very fact of rejecting idolatry and only worshipping the one true God is what gave them the honor and enabled them to be called Yehudim of the Judah. And you know, the characteristic, why, and which fits so well with this month of courage and humility, is that this characteristic, it's called in the Bible, in Hebrew, Mesirut Nefesh. Nefesh is your spirit or soul, and it was this courage of inner courage of the spirit and the soul, having the courage to sanctify God's name, even if it comes to the place of forfeiting one's own life. Esther took that, had that courage, which she said, if I perish, I perish. But I know I have to do this for the sake of God, to honor the name of God. And now, of course, this doesn't mean that we always have to be in mortal danger, but it's just that we need to love the Lord our God with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our might. And just as our Savior and Master Yeshua did, that he was also the perfect illustration of courage, of this Mesirut Nefesh and humility, and he was prepared to suffer even unto death, even at the same season of Passover. And that brings me to the next and final part today, which is the whole reason, and not only at Passover, but you find throughout the Hebrew scriptures that you're always told to remember the Exodus, remember the Exodus, remember you were slaves in Egypt, and now you are set free and redeemed. Now, actually, the root of the name Nissan, the month, is Nes, and Nes means miracle. And of course, if you think of the Exodus, you remember all the mighty supernatural miracles that God performed for his people, miracles that transcended nature, that people couldn't understand. You know, for example, he sent the 10 plagues in order that to show Pharaoh, and at the same time show the Israelites that the idols were powerless against the might of the one true God, and even parting the Red Sea. And we remember all these supernatural miracles of God. We know that there are hidden miracles every day, but these are the big supernatural miracles of the Exodus. But we also need to remember that the place of the Israelites in the story, because the Israelites, another name for the night of Passover, which is Leil Pesach, is Leil Shimurim, which means the night of watching or anticipating. And the Israelites were very much in this position, this mode of waiting and anticipating, because they knew God was going to set them free. Moses had said he's going to lead you out back to the promised land, but they didn't know how he was going to do it, or when exactly. They just had to be waiting and prepared, and had to obey. They needed the faith to believe what Moses had told them and what they had heard from God, but they also needed the courage to obey his instructions, to bring the lamb into the home, to sacrifice it, to daub the blood on the doorposts, all in full view. I mean, the Egyptians knew what was going on. They must have smelt the wonderful roasting lamb and seeing these crazy Israelites painting the blood on their doorposts. But they had to have the courage to do that, and also to wait in readiness and anticipation for this final redemption that would happen on this night of Pesach. And you know, the rabbis, interestingly, there are a number of rabbis actually who say that they believe the final redemption will also come on Leil Pesach, Leil Shimurim, the night of anticipation, of waiting for the redemption and the salvation. And it is a time of salvation, as we saw with Yeshua, but they say the final redemption, when Messiah will return, and his footsteps are coming so much closer all the time. We can just see that it's almost like the stage is being set for his arrival, but some rabbis believe it's going to be on Passover, on the night of the Seder, of the anticipation, and and why? Because it's nothing the Israelites could do on their own, and it's nothing here in Israel that can be done in human strength, in our own strength. It's going to take his miraculous power and intervention and miracles to deliver, to bring Israel out from the hostile enemies, the situation of threat of the hostile enemies all around her. So it's going to take a mighty miracle, which could be, of course, Messiah's arrival and the establishing of God's holy kingdom on earth. Now, there's just one last question. So, if we're in a state of anticipation as well, waiting for the final redemption of Israel and the world, what can we do? How do we, like, even during this month of Nissan, what can we do? And I think we can focus on two elements in our lives this month, now at this season, as we go through and keep climbing. And the first is strengthening our faith, because all of this is just based on faith. It was you can only wait for God's miracles. You can only receive his enabling and strength by faith, in faith believing. And so how do we do that? I think it's that in that humility, saying, I need to learn, we need to know more, we need to learn more, to study his word, to just be constantly looking into his word in order to hear his still small voice guiding us and directing us into what the next thing is, how to prepare, how to be ready, to know the Father's will in order to do it. And we also need to be, I really believe that we need to be deepening our prayer lives. Now, I know many of us, especially women, that you pray all the time during the day, please Lord, I need your help with this, what do I do now, but there's another aspect of prayer, and it's almost one where it becomes communal, where you can be praying the same things at the same time. And we've got, Cindy did a beautiful review on Alden Solovy's books, which are a collection of poems, but they're prayers, they're songs, they're beautiful, called This Grateful Heart and This Joyous Soul. And I think you can see them here on the His Israel Facebook page, or else look on the His Israel website to see the review. And if you can, invest in them. They're just a beautiful addition to helping get into a rhythm of prayer, just as we have the rhythm of the months, get into it. It's just this beautiful rhythm of prayer. And, you know, others are praying at the same time. We can all be praying these same prayers. So that's how we strengthen our faith through the Word and through prayer, communicating with our Father. And the second thing is what the Israelites did. They had the faith to believe, but they also had to have the courage to obey. And when we know our identity as holy people, set apart unto Him as a royal priesthood, we know we're King's kids. We sons and daughters of the King, and we have beautiful rights as such. And but also we know as a royal priesthood that there are also responsibilities. As you know, we just read last month in Adar the Torah portions of the appointing and anointing of the priests, and with Aaron the high priest, and I think Moses anointed them with oil, the oil of anointing on it was their ear, apart from on their head, it was on the ear, on the thumb, and on the big toe of the foot. Now those were very obvious reasons. Why? Because our ears need to be anointed to shema, to hear that still small voice when God is preparing us and instructing us in the way to go. Thumbs, to use our hands. The priests used their hands in blessing, in worship, in doing what needed to be done in the temple. So our hands need to be anointed, and toes are our feet. The priests needed to know and walk in God's will and ways, and that's the desire of our hearts too, to know His will and to walk in ways that are pleasing to Him. So let's go through this month with those things in mind, and aim to strengthen our faith, to be hearing, shemaing, and doing and walking in ways that are pleasing to Him, and that draw us closer and ever closer to His side and in His presence. And as we do so, let's just trust that more and more of His presence will be filling our lives and shining His light of glory and truth into the world around us. Amen. So bless you. Thank you for being here. Blessings from Jerusalem. Shalom.